Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Rodeo Time, the podcast. We are with, I've been super nervous that I'm going to address somebody as the wrong thing. So,
that's
Sergeant
a good
Major?
Intro.
Sergeant. What?
Sergeant
Colonel.
First Class. Sergeant First Class, Michael Widdick.
Sergeant First Class, Michael Widdick. We are going to hear his story. Got 11 combat tours. He is an Army Ranger. You've been in for 11 and a half years
Yep.
in the Army. We are in Fort Benning, Georgia, with the Army, and so yeah, we get to hear a lot of cool stories, how he got started, what it's like being shot at the first time. Very interesting.
It happens.
And if you guys are interested in the Army and interested in ways that you can potentially earn $50,000 for joining different Army MOSs, did I say that right? Then
Do I get $50,000?
Yes, you won't.
You're giving me $50,000.
No, I'm getting it. No, you can get it potentially if you're listening. If you click the links below, follow you, give you more information on how to get involved with the Army, and over 150 different career paths you can take. And what is it? Only 10 of those are combat MOSs, which is essentially a job that you can have. So, I mean, that leaves 140 other potential jobs you could have in the Army. A lot of options.
Right.
A lot of things that I had no idea even existed. So, and we are specifically with the Army Marksmanship unit today, and that's who all these ladies and gentlemen that we've been working with are their job right now. And so we'll get into that story now. Now on to the podcast. Yeah. I usually wear mine, but I got to wear this helmet just because it's kind of my thing while I'm out here.
It makes sense. It adds like the mystique of you, Dale Brisby.
You like it?
I do. I think it's cool, man.
I'll sell it to you.
How much?
How much you got in your wallet?
Nothing. I got a car.
I better not sell it because it's Willie's. Isn't this Willie's? Yeah, this one's. He works for me. He would probably be heartbroken.
Oh no.
Actually, he's broke. I could split it with him. What'd you say about this build? So we're in the, what do you call it, the Roundhouse?
This is the Roundhouse, yeah. So I'm going to paraphrase here. I don't know exactly, like 100% certain, but from the best of my knowledge, this building was like dilapidated. It was falling down. It wasn't in great shape. And this is back in the early, like, man, I don't know, 50s, you know. So John Wayne showed up. And a bunch of other famous people have come through, like presidents, you know, all kinds of cool people, right? But John Wayne showed up to film the Green Berets, and they brought him up here, right? Because the Army Marksmanship unit existed, right? So back then, the real big popular things were, you know, Camp Perry service rifle matches, right? Which you met those guys yesterday. Mm-hmm. So same concept, you know, lay in your belly, shoot super tight groups at various distances. Right, very hard, very challenging. And back then, it was specific to like the M1 Grand and things of that nature, right? So it was super cool, super popular. It was kind of like that, you know, Cold War era point. So like winning the Olympics was a big deal, right? Beating the Russians or whatever, right? And letting the world know that we're the best at all times and all things, especially marksmanship, right? So John Wayne showed up to film the Green Berets or whatnot, and they brought him up here to shoot some trap, and that's what that painting is right there. You can see that's John Wayne in his, you know, U.S. Army outfit, shooting trap and skeet. And he would do it all day and have lunch here and take his breaks in between filming and coming here and hang out. So I guess it was like super dilapidated. So they gave, you know, an officer a job, and they're, hey, you know, here's some money, fix that thing up. So they've got this thing all nice and pretty, all good to go. And then John Wayne liked it so much, he was like, hey, check it out. I'm not going to a hotel. I'm staying right here. So he like slept upstairs. They played poker upstairs, like smoked cigars, drank whiskey, you know, Who knows? And then shot trap outside all day long, hung out. It was like deer camp, you know.
That's
cool.
Just
hung out. So it's pretty cool. This place is super unique because it's been here since like the start of the unit, right? 1956 kind of thing. And that's, yeah, you got like General Patton, you got John Wayne, you got some other ones around here.
Eisenhower's over there.
Eisenhower, you got General Hodges, a couple other super cool people. So super cool place, super nostalgic.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's even rumors that they left the poker table upstairs. I haven't been upstairs. I don't think you can get up there anymore, but
Yeah, they said that's where the AC unit is now.
yeah, that
So,
makes sense.
Right.
But supposedly they left the poker table and the cards how they lie. So kind of eerie, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool to think about, though, sitting in the same place that all those guys have hung out before.
Yeah, if you think, especially with like, got the elk rack, they brought that down, and it was kind of like a place that all these people could come and gather and just kind of like deer camp, man. It was just like get away from the family, right? Come hang out with the bros, smoke cigars, drink whiskey, eat steaks, right? They grill steaks right out there, and then they just shoot trap. And that was like the thing to do, man, right? So
like, but on Fort Benning, speaking of deer camp, like there's certain places you can hunt, right?
you can hunt almost all of Fort Benning, obviously not just the populated, areas, where there's buildings and streets and whatnot, obviously, but there's archery zone only, which is like all the wooded areas in between the buildings and whatnot. They have specific designated archery only places, shotgun only places. And then the rest of the, 100,000 acres or whatever it is you rifle hunt or bow or whatever. And man, there's phenomenal turkey hunting here. Really good deer hunting. I'd say, like, I'm paraphrasing, but 8-ish years ago, maybe they, only a certain portion of Fort Benning was a quality deer management life kind of controlled area, right? And that area was known as like the Kilos, which is like way up northeast section of Fort Benning, right? And all them deer were real big up there. Really good, healthy breed going on up there, right? It was all, they controlled it. They had food plots. It was really, really good stuff up there. And then eventually they ended up fixing up all Fort Benning and making it all QGMA, to the best of my knowledge. And now it's very exceptional deer hunting now. You're looking at an average of, I wouldn't say an average, but a really good buck down here now in Fort Benning is like in the 140s. It's pretty good. In fact, my boss, the guy I work with, Andrew Pryor, he shot like the third biggest buck on record for Muskogee County. So that's the whole county that Fort Benning happens to fall in here in the city of Columbus, right? In this area. It was like, I think the raw score was like 154 and 5/8 or something. It was massive.
Dang.
It was a big buck for down here, man.
Right.
Because you got to think it's so hot.
Yep.
Minimal food, not really minimal food, but it's minimal water. Let's just put it that way, right? And then you got sparse food, right? Everything gets eaten by all kinds of things, but it's so hot the deer don't get big like Iowa or Michigan or Kansas, right? They don't get big fat deer that you have to get thick for the winter, right? Or even Texas, right? Like
how big this place is.
This place is huge, absolutely massive. And it's been here since like the dawn of time, like in the Army, right? Like I used to test all kinds of cool things here during like the Davy Crockett round, which was like this shoulder fired missile thing, but it launched like this, like some sort of like nuclear variant missile kind of thing that like they tested for a while over here on Farnsworth Range by 3rd Ranger Battalion. And then they stopped and, got rid of that program probably because it didn't work well or something. But so they tell you don't go in the woods and wander around in there because there's, weird hazardous waste material out there, and or even like eat the pigs. If you shoot pigs out of there, like you're not really supposed to eat them, kind of thing. And
wow,
it's kind of cool, man. Yeah, like there's great pig hunting here, tons of pigs. Turkey hunting's phenomenal. Deer hunting's pretty good, and then fishing's great too. Like this is actually like the bass capital area of the country. So like Lake Eufaula, about, 30-minute ride down the road. It's technically in Alabama. You cross the Chattahoochee, right? It is like the bass capital of the world. Like they have massive tournaments there. Like people go there and it's a huge ordeal. Like between turkeys and bass fishing, this place is like a mecca for those two things.
This is where we come to go noodling.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You ever been?
I have not. I've always wanted to. Never had the opportunity.
Cool. I got that up on you then.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've always wanted to though?
Always wanted to. Just never had the opportunity. I understand the concept. It's kind of scary, honestly, right? Like what if there's a snapping turtle in there or something? Bam, gets you.
Yeah, that's what everybody says. I go with it's a YouTuber. Her name's Hannah Barron.
Yeah,
and then her dad, Jeff Barron. They kind of guide us. They're
I think I saw that on your Instagram.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They Jeff is, they're pretty knowledgeable. They said they've never encountered
some big ones. Like I've seen her with some like monsters.
Yeah, like 60, 70 pounds.
Yeah.
Right.
So
huge.
So the concept, correct me if I'm wrong, you just stick your hand in this hole, right? And a big old catfish gets your arm and you pull it out.
The females come in and lay eggs, and then most of the time it'd be like a male kind of protecting the hole.
Yeah.
So you can either fish like a natural hole, like something under a boat ramp, or that sometimes they'll make boxes about the size of the top of this table, and it'll be just a box they put in waist deep water, put a huge rock on it, and then they'll have a hole in it in the corner.
Yeah.
And so you'll go in and you put your arm into this hole, into this box where you can maybe barely reach the back. You know, there's got to be enough room for a decent sized fish.
Yeah.
But you'll put your arm back there, and those fish can feel you. They can't see you. It's muddy, it's dark, and
Sure.
but they can feel you as soon as you are in the box, and then they'll just go to latching on to your. You want to keep your hand closed, because if you go in like this, they'll grab and roll and twist your fingers
break
up.
Your finger or something. That's gnarly.
So you put your fist in there, and they'll just grab it, try to swallow it, and at that point, you'll grab their bottom jaw. And you bring them to the edge of the hole, and you'll put your left hand behind their gills, or you can go and you go behind the gill plate so it doesn't mess them up.
Okay.
But you'll go through their mouth and then run your hand out the gill plate, and then that'll keep them from rolling.
Oh, okay.
And
because otherwise they kind of like gator toss or gator
exactly
roll. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
So
that's wild, man.
There's blue cats, and they bite the hardest, and then there's flatheads or yellow cats, and they taste the best. But yeah, the biggest we've pulled out is 40 pounds.
Shoo.
But the first time, we've gone 3 years now, and the first time you do it, or the first fish of the day is usually, I'm pretty nervous.
I bet.
But after that,
I
don't do anything deep. You know, some people, they'll go like as deep as this room.
I've seen some of her videos, I want to say, and it was like, dude, she's like wading in water, man.
Yeah.
She's like going down. Like,
right.
I'm not about that life.
But there's probably some things that you've done that I've not done.
I'm sure.
Did you say 11 tours?
Yes.
That's
11 tours.
That's somebody addicted to the Army, to the game.
So it kind of gets that way, man. Coming from special operations, you know, how you get there in the first place, you kind of have to be special, or not special, but you got to try, right? And it takes,
you got to want it.
You got to want it, man. You got to train, you got to want it, and then you go through a vast amounts of different selections, right? You got to get pre-qualified in certain things, whether it be, you know, airborne qualified or whatever, right? And then you got to go to a selection, get selected, make it through that, and then you go to your unit, and then usually the first couple years or so, you know, is kind of like a vetting process, right? So for instance, like going to the Ranger Regiment, once you make it to the Ranger Regiment, you got to be airborne qualified, of course. You got to pass airborne school. And then once you pass that, you go to RASP. Now, you know, you go through RASP, Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. That's what that stands for. You go through that. Once you make it there, you go to your unit, right? Whether it's 1st, 2nd, or 3rd Ranger Battalion. And then you go to a company, right? A through C, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. And then while you're there, you know, there's kind of a standard. You have like 24 months, I think it is, to go to Ranger School, right? Which you're familiar with that? No, not at all.
Not really.
Perfect. So it's a completely separate entity. A lot of people in the you know, civilian world kind of get confused between the Ranger Regiment and Ranger School, right? So people be like, "Oh, my son's a Ranger," and it's like, "Oh, that's awesome. What battalion was he in?" He's like, "Oh, he graduated. Now he's in the 82nd." It's like, well, he's not in the Ranger. He's not a Ranger. Like as far as in the Ranger Regiment, he's just Ranger qualified. So Ranger School is just an Army school, right? It's here on Fort Benning. It's just a school that anyone can go to. So like if you join the Army tomorrow and you went to your unit, you could volunteer and go to Ranger School. There's some prerequisites, right? You got to like be able to pass a 5-mile run in 40 minutes. You got to do some other things, whatever. And then you go to Ranger School, and it's just a school, man. There's like 3 phases. There's what they call Derby phase, which is here on Fort Benning, and you just learn how to like patrol through the woods and shoot, communicate and move and set up ambushes, and do some jungle tactics type kind of thing, right? And just basic infantry ranger tactics, I guess, right? And then there's a mountain phase, which is the same concept, just in a mountainous terrain. And then you do a Florida phase, which is the same concept, just in a Florida terrain, right? So swamp stuff. You do some stuff with zodiacs and learn how to like kind of infill via zodiacs and stuff. And then you graduate. And when you graduate, if you pass all that, it's about 3 months-ish, you graduate and you get a cool little tab that goes on your uniform, right? It just says Ranger, and you're Ranger qualified. It doesn't really, it's separating for sure. It's a hard school. I think they say it's one of the hardest schools in the Army, right? It's definitely challenging. You're sleep deprived. You get like 2 MREs a day.
Dang.
You get like anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night kind of thing or something. Right?
For how long?
I think each phase is like 2 or 3 weeks, right? So like for 2 or 3 weeks, you're out in the woods.
Dang.
You know, and you're getting like 2 to 3 hours a night kind of thing, you know, and you're like, so it teaches you how to like work under stress, work when you're deprived of sleep, you know, challenging you cognitively and physically,
Yes, sir.
mentally, all those things, right? That's, you know, can you still perform? Can you still act, think, shoot, maneuver, communicate while you're under stress, sleep deprived, hungry, you know, injured, maybe little micro injuries, all that stuff, right? In the mountains, in the woods, in the swamps, wherever, right?
Yes, sir.
So it makes a big difference, you know, for sure. You learn some things about yourself, you know. They say there's a hungry ranger or a sleepy ranger. So you either figure out if you're really sleepy all the time or you're really hungry. I was like a hungry ranger, so I would trade people my MREs and like take their shifts for them, you know, and
Gotcha.
pull security. So I get another MRE, right? But so anyways, once you pass Ranger school, then you can kind of stay in the Ranger Regiment. So the Ranger Regiment is like a unit, right? Just like, you know, Special Forces unit or the 82nd Airborne or the 101st, you know, it's a unit, right? So like, you know, myself and Joel, we were in 3rd Ranger Battalion. So that's, you know, I know, you know, a real unit that deploys and goes to combat and has been since, you know, World War II, right? So, so that's the big difference really between that and Ranger school.
Gotcha.
So 11 deployments, going back to that, right? So, yeah, I was fortunate enough to be there for a long time and do many things. I was a private to a weapons squad leader, to a platoon sergeant, sniper section leader for a couple of years. I worked with some various other agencies, did some pretty cool stuff. But you kind of do get addicted to it, you know, like you said earlier. So, and it takes a special person, I think, to, you know, kind of stay there for that long. And you know, a part of it's being fortunate and not getting hurt, right?
Yes, sir.
Because obviously you can get hurt overseas, right? But you can also get injured jumping, injured training, right? And then it's also taxing on your family, your personal life too, right? So some people get, you know, in unfortunate positions or cases where, you know, start having trouble at home and it kind of forces you out of there and, you know, or you get separated and divorced and, you know, you kind of keep trying to live the game and, kind of go that route, I guess. You know, it's like, I imagine kind of like how being a cowboy is, right?
That's
you know
exactly what
like,
went through my head.
once you become a cowboy, it's like you just want a cowboy, I imagine, right?
Right.
Like I've always, you know, ever since I've been a kid, I've always wanted to be a cowboy, right? Ever since I saw Lonesome Dove when I was like 7, and I thought that was the coolest thing on the planet. Right? I was like, I wanted to be Gus. That's all I wanted to do, right? And ever since then, it was like I watched every other movie possible and was just like, dude, there's nothing cooler than being a cowboy, right?
Yeah.
But like you get, I imagine, addicted to the lifestyle.
100%.
That's all you want to do, right? You just want to keep chasing cattle, fixing fences, making sure it's good, making money, selling cattle, and doing the Lord's work out there, right? It's hard, honest living, man. But I imagine it's wonderful. You're outside, you get to enjoy nature and you know, God's beautiful earth and wherever you are, whether it be Texas or Montana or whatever, right? But it's the same thing. You get addicted to it. You're always gone. You're always working, long hours, right? Sun up to sundown, I imagine. And it's kind of the same as being in the military in general, really. Like, you know, you're gone a lot, right? So I would be home for about, in the Ranger Regiment at least, I'd be home for about 8 months or so. And we would train that entire time, right? We'd be jumping, pretending to shoot bad guys in the woods, running around, you know, maneuvering, communicating, working on battle drills, right? Things to do, driving cars, jumping out of planes, whatever it was, right? And then you get a little bit of break here and there. You take about 2 weeks of leave, right? When you come back from a deployment, and then you take another 2 weeks of leave prior to deploying again. And then once you deploy, you're gone for about 4 to 5 months, which is much shorter than like the conventional Army. So like we do have it a little bit nicer, right, than the rest of the guys. So like some of these other folks I work with here who are from the conventional Army, like, man, they've done tours of like 15 months, man.
Dang.
That's straight, like 12-month tours gone. You're in Iraq for 12 months straight. Or like maybe you come back for a couple weeks or something, and then you go back over and finish your tour. But it's long, man. It's taxing. So it's like, it's kind of rewarding also in that aspect of like, if you can get to, a special operations unit, you get to do a bit more funner stuff. It's a little bit better living. You get cooler uniforms, a little relaxed grooming standards here and there, better haircuts,
Right.
You don't look so G.I. Joe. But definitely the mission set's harder, more dangerous. They expect a lot more out of you. You can't mess up nearly as much or so things of that nature.
Yeah. I think, being a cowboy for sure, but even more specific than that, sometimes being a rodeo cowboy.
Yeah.
That's
probably a much better example.
One thing that, it's, you get started down this path and, once you bring a family into it, I think a lot of guys, like one of the tough parts, which I'm sure it'd be tough for somebody in special operations, but, when you go to do your job, you're going to, especially when that's how you make money, getting on bucking horses, getting on bucking bulls.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pretty fun job.
Yeah.
And so all right, I got to leave. You leave your family to go have fun.
And you get addicted to it, right? The crowd, especially when you're winning, I imagine, right?
But I could see how it
movies, right, or whatever.
Create some tension,
100%.
like if mama's back home watching the family and you're off enjoying your job, especially like a rodeo, like you're headed to a party. It is that town's one time a year where they're going to have a party.
Yep.
And of course, you guys, you're not necessarily headed to a party. You might enjoy it.
Kind of. It's not a party by no means, but you're there for a reason. You volunteered. You know what you're getting into, right?
Right.
So a part of you kind of does enjoy it, right?
Yes.
And you do get addicted to it because it's, you are training to do something. So when you go overseas, it's like my work actually, I used to tell my wife, when I'm home, I'm not really working. Does that make sense?
Right.
I am. I'm going to training. I'm bettering my soldiers, the guys under me. I'm influencing them. I'm mentoring them, molding them, trying to make them better rangers, make myself better ranger. I'm learning from my superiors, right? How to become more lethal, better tacticians, whatever it is, right? But you're just sharpening your skill set. That's all you're doing. I'm putting more tools in my tool bag. That's all I'm doing.
Right.
And then the real work begins when I deploy. I get on an airplane and I fly all the way to some foreign country. As soon as I land, my government's told me to find the enemy and destroy him. And I'm like, Roger that.
Roger that.
Right. So at that point, that's when my work begins. And then it's like, you start the clock and it's like every day is the same thing. You wake up, you do some cardio, you eat, and then you find out if you have a mission or not. If you have a mission, cool. You start planning that mission. You start getting your products, your information, you start building the plan. And then before you know it, you're getting on black helicopters and you're going out, or trucks or whatever, right? So, and if you don't, then it's wake up, do some cardio, hang out, go figure out if you have a mission, no mission, cool. Go work out again, go eat again, go take a nap, train your guys. So I do some hip pocket training is what we call it. So I'm like pretending to do some breaching. I'm pretending to clear a room, pretending to do shoot, or go to the range and actually shoot, or do what we call glass house drills. So we have like this white engineer tape, right? Just like a cloth material, I guess. But you can lay it on the ground it comes on a big, like 100, yard spool, and you can make a box on the ground and you can pretend to flow in and clear a room, right? Or do whatever. So you're constantly doing something, if you're not doing something, it's because you've already done your tasks, these other tasks that need to get done. And then once that's done, then you can do whatever you want. And guys go work out, guys box, guys play video games, watch movies, whatever it is.
I can assume like once you get to that level, there's a lot that's expected of you to do beyond the 9-to-5 part, whether it's while you're overseas or while you're back here during that 8 months. For instance, like, if you're going to spend 90 minutes in the gym that day so that you're strong enough to pick up 2 dudes at once, that's
right.
that's something above and beyond, but it's something that probably you're all doing. I feel like there's probably not a lot of 9-to-5ers in that scenario.
No. So, and that's the other part of it too, is you kind of get addicted to like always doing something. You know what I mean? Because so there's a saying that's like find work, right? When you're clearing a room, you're clearing a building as a team or squad or whatever, It's find work. You get in rooms clear and secure, find work. Go pull security. Go do something. Like find work. It's the same thing. So if I go in there, I got no mission for the day, I'm doing something. All right, what can I do? Well, I'm going to go do dry fires like we were doing yesterday. And I'm just going to work on that draw over and over again. And I'm going to sharpen that ability, sharpen that skill. Or I'm going to go shoot bullets. I'm going to go, if I have a range and I have ammo, I'm going to go shoot some bullets and get better at shooting. Or I'm going to take my guys and do other training. Or we're going to go work out again. Or we're going to go stretch for 30 minutes. That's it, just to get limbered up. Or you know what I mean? Whatever. Or I'm going to go fix my truck, make sure it's lubricated and constantly doing something. I got air in the tires. I don't need to change the oil. I'll change the oil just because I feel like it. You know, like you're doing something. It's always something. You're staying busy. You're always improving your foxhole, as they say.
What really kind of blew my mind, I rodeoed with he was my college roommate. We both rodeoed together, and he had been in the Marines, but he was talking about like something that was humbling was the fact that you are you do all those things to be the best at your thing, and then sometimes like you have no control over the outcome. And so it's like you see some of the best guys, and that just happened to be where it happened that day. It had nothing to do with anything they did
100%.
right or wrong.
100%.
And it seems like that would just be so humbling.
Yeah.
But I guess that's just part of it at the
it is.
Makes you respect the game.
It does, man, because like it's anyone's game, man. It's a roll of the dice every night. Every night you go out, it's a roll of the dice. It could be what you think is the most simplistic mission ever. I'm just going to go in there, snag this dude up, bring him back. Turns out to be the worst night ever, right? Or the ones you think is going to be the worst thing ever, and you're preparing for all-out war.
Super smooth.
Super smooth. Nothing happens at all. Crickets. Not a single fire shot. And you're like, dang, dude, this is lame.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, and, you know, it's all, you know, it's all in God's hand. That's how I always looked at it.
Yes,
man.
sir.
You can't avoid nothing. You can't avoid it. You can't get around it. You know, I've laid on my back and watched a pine tree just get dissolved. Lower and lower and lower. And I was just like, ugh. Looked at my buddy next to me. And I was like, it's been fun, man. We kind of like bumped knucks, right? And I was just like, well, here we go. And then it stopped. And I was like,
dang.
Okay, well, let's go. And we like moved, right? And it was just like, not my time. You know?
There's a lot of situations I can't think of, like, but basically in life, you know, I think when I think about success or failure, what I would love is that in all the situations where I'm tested, be it rodeo or just life, I would love that. I mean, you're going to experience failure, but I think the one that would be the most hard to reason with, the most difficult to reason with, is like your failure because you weren't prepared. And so it sounds like, like for instance, that tree, had it continued, you know, that's not your lack of preparation. Yep. That was just one of those things. And so it sounds like you're trying to be prepared in every single aspect of
so like doing. So exercising, right? In the military, I think you could easily say exercising is a big deal, mm-hmm. right? Everyone you know, right? Oh, you're in the military because you look fit or you got, you know, whatever, right? You know, it comes from the dawn of time when the military stood up in this country, right? Like 6 a.m., you shave, you showered, you know, went to the bathroom, and then you started working out. And then by 9 a.m., you were eating chow, and then you were going to work. And you just kind of build that, and you get that ingrained. And it has to, you know, it comes with its own purpose. Like, you have to be in shape. If you're not in shape, you can't do this job. Like, if I can't pick you up and get you out of a bad situation, you know, that's not good. Right. Then you're definitely going to die. You know? Both, yeah. Because now I'm going to try to like get you out of there, and I can't get you out, and then we both get killed. Right. But just not even, you know, if you can't maneuver yourself, you know, to a certain extent, right. And get over walls, you know, get on top of roofs or whatever it is, man. If you can't efficiently move your body or carry weight, like you're no use to you become a liability. Mm-hmm. Right. And I've seen plenty of that. I've had, you know, younger guys show up to the unit and, you know, because not everyone isn't always perfect, right? Some people kind of squeak through the cracks, right? The vetting process of these selections aren't always the best, or they are, and just sometimes some people just get through who don't really belong, man. And you get some people who are just like those problem childs and problem cases, and they lack on, intellect, just ability to think outside the box or common sense, or they grew up in a weird environment back home and they don't have like personable skills or like street smarts almost. Because that's the thing, man. Like if you can't like
think on your feet,
or look at something and be like, that's weird, I probably shouldn't touch that. It's like, you're just a robot. Like you're no good to anybody, especially at that level.
Especially
right?
at special operations.
Yeah. But you still get those problem children who like can't run, man. And it's like they fall out of everything. They fall out. They can't carry weight. And then they just become a liability. And you got to end up cutting them away and sending them on their way to somewhere else, man, where they can be of help somewhere that's not here. It's
right.
It can be kind of cutthroat, man. But like you said, it's not, you can't always help everything. But what you can do is help prepare yourself.
Yes, sir.
Right. So I imagine it's like going to a rodeo, right? You're going to ride bulls, you're going to practice as much as you can, right?
Yes, sir.
Now there's that fine line of like not getting hurt, right? Before you go to that rodeo. Same thing in the military. Like I can only train so much to where I reach what we call tracer burnout, right? Like shooting on the range yesterday, right? Me and you, I will only go on the range and do that with myself or students for only so long. Because after a while, you'll just start seeing diminishing returns because you're getting tired, right? And you're just not even paying attention anymore. You're not calling your shots anymore, whatever it may be, which we don't want to do. But you'll see, or like guys will work out too hard, too often, maybe like ignore signs that their bodies are giving them of sores or micro tears or injuries, and they'll just keep pushing, man. And then they'll end up getting majorly injured, like tear an MCL or whatever it is. And now you're absolutely no use to anybody. Right? You could be the best soldier I have on the team, but if you tear your Achilles because you kept running every single day, and now we got to deploy, I can't take you with me. You have a torn Achilles, or whatever it is, right? And it's like, so same concept.
I was talking to a special operations guy, and we were at a benefit. It was a rodeo. It was a kind of a veteran type benefit thing, but he was kind of entranced with the bull riding. And we were on the back of the chutes, and he was, filming every single bull ride and up close and personal. And he was throwing us a bone. I was, obviously special operations, that the kind of things that I think he kind of has a similar story to you, maybe, a dozen or so deployments. But we were talking about the fight, and once you accomplish the fundamentals, once you know the fundamentals, well, then there comes a point where you've got to control your emotions and turn it on mentally and fight, because when the gate opens, like that animal is going to fight.
Right.
Like he's going to 0 to 60. He doesn't care if you have conquered him before. He doesn't know. He's going to go 0 to 60 in no time at all, and every single time. Matter of fact, if he doesn't, we get a re-ride. We'll give you one that does, so like this one doesn't buck hard enough. All right, we got to get you on. And he was just admiring how every time we nod our head, there will be a fight. And he was saying one of the challenges they have is that, he said, in his words, 95% of the rooms they went in were benign. There was nobody there.
Yep.
And so 19 out of 20 times, like they have to go through these motions and there is no fight, which to me would intensify, which I'm sure there are some times where you absolutely know that like you're about to land this helicopter right there and there will be a fight.
100%. And, that's also due to the superior technology we have nowadays, right? Like we have tons of little airplanes with cameras that can show you exactly what's going on at the target building as you're approaching it, and you're getting heads up. Like you're like, hey, there's dudes on the roofs, they got guns, just be advised. And nowadays everything's so controlled, and like they'll start doing what we call pre-assault fires, and they'll start shooting guys on rooftops before we even get up there, right? So like 20 years ago, we didn't have these things, so guys had it harder, man. Like and we've only gotten better and safer and safer and safer. But
controlling your emotions,
that's a big deal, man. That's a huge thing, and frankly, that's one of the biggest things. You can be the greatest dude there is, right? You can be big, strong, fast, smart, shoot great, have great hair, and then as soon as we get on target, man, and those bullets fly, you might hit the ground and start just curling up in a ball, right? And you won't ever know it until it happens. So but you have to be able to control those emotions, right? If you can't gather yourself and just for me, it was never a problem. Luckily, right? Like, I don't know why, right? Like the first time I got shot at, right? I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty crazy, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
whoa. And my training kicked in, I guess, right? And okay, I think I need to move now. Okay. And you just move to cover. And then you start getting yelled at by guys who've been there longer than you in these situations already, who just kind of father you, right? They're kind of like father figures, man. And there's like, hey, what are you doing, weirdo? Let's go. And you're like, oh yeah, Rush Hart.
That's true. Cause
you kind of go.
What year was your first deployment?
2011.
So there had been guys over there for 10
years.
Yes,
especially where I went. The guys had just come back from the previous deployment. They saw a lot of unfortunate events. They had been through some hell. And so they were primed. They were ready to go. They had a vengeance. So
gotcha.
We went over with a vengeance, and we went over and we got like the blunt end of that, right? We got like, we got hazed, we got screamed at, we got the kind of bad end of the stick on that of just like, this is what happened. You weren't there. You don't know. And it's like, you're right. 100%. And so it's like, we trained hard and we wanted to prove ourselves, right?
Did that help you?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Right. Cause it made it more surreal. Right. It kind of prepared you. Right. And then we went overseas, and I'll never forget my first mission. I walked 13 kilometers in the mountains of a certain mountain range somewhere. And, we're walking, I'm carrying a Skedco, which is like a fold out, plastic litter, I guess. Does that make sense? So it just rolls up in a big ball, goes in a bag, like a big tube, but you can unroll it, and it's like you can put a person on it, strap them in, and carry them. I'm carrying that in a bag with a bunch of breaching tools. I got like a hooligan, a sledgehammer, a bunch of other stuff that are heavy. So I'm carrying this bag, probably weighs X amount of, I don't know, close to 50 pounds probably, I don't know. But 13 kilometers through the mountains, I'm walking around, and we get there, and not a single dang thing happens.
Dang.
We grab this bad guy, helicopters land, we go, and we fly home. I'm like, that was miserable.
Yeah.
And then the next one, it was hot. We got on target. It was like kind of cool. And I remember being like, man, I don't know. This seems like it's going to be kind of lame. Right? It's only my second mission. I don't know. You never know. And bam, just like that, it goes. It's like, whoa. And just people start shooting, man. And then your training kicks in, man. Right. It's like, so imagine, I don't know, but I can only imagine. It's like when you're on that bull and you give the nod, everything's calm, right? A little bit of moving, I imagine, right? That thing's blowing a little bit. And you're like, this is about to get pretty gnarly. And you give the nod and the gate opens, and he goes. It's like that. It goes from 0 to 100.
100%.
Just like that.
Yes, sir. So,
and all your training kicks in, right? Like you were saying yesterday, you do the opposite of what the bull's doing or whatever,
counterintuitive.
Right? Counterintuitive, right? So you're doing whatever your training told you to do to stay on that bull for 8 seconds at least, right? Same thing. I start getting yelled at. You're like, oh, is that gunfire? And then you get immediately yelled at by someone who's like, hey, weirdo, move to that wall. Get over there. Shoot back. And you're like, oh, no problem. Rolling over there. Start shooting. Do whatever it is, man. And it's just like, it just goes. It's machine runs itself at that point.
So for us, one thing, my intern program, I get a lot of guys coming in on their first. I've helped a lot of people get on their first bull.
Yeah.
First bronc, whatever. And usually like the first 20 is a good average, I think. Guys are blacked out.
Oh, I bet.
And then
if you put me on a bull tomorrow, I would be overly ecstatic and also freaking out.
I don't know.
I don't know what I'm doing right now.
I don't know that you would probably.
Think this is going to be gnarly. And then as soon as that thing went up.
So I imagine your first bull, you black out.
Oh, 100%.
But you've probably got a pretty good control of your adrenaline and it may not take 20 for you to stop blacking out. Right. I bet it would be a lot less.
Like jumping out of an airplane. You ever jumped out of an airplane?
No.
It's a blast. You should
I'm going to black out.
You should do it. But the first time you do it, it's pretty intense, right? And I'm only static line. I'm not like a free fall guy, unfortunately. But so static line is a little bit more lame now, right? Now that I'm pretty seasoned at, I've got like, I don't know, 50 jumps or so, which isn't a whole lot, but it's enough to be accustomed to it, I guess. But when you do it, after 30, 40, 50, you're like, all right, like, let's do this. The best part's the free fall. You fall about 5 seconds or so, then your chute opens, and then the rest of it's kind of anticlimactic. You just float on down to the ground, and
right.
Depending on the wind, you either land really hard or you don't, and sometimes it can hurt and sometimes it doesn't. It's pretty lame, right? And then the free fall guys, though, they say it's an absolute blast, right? I got a good buddy who jumps with the Silver Wings, which is like the professional skydiving team for the Army, right? They jump in like baseball games or whatever, right?
Right.
You know, he says he does it for a living because he loves it. It's an absolute blast, right? There's nothing like it. There's no other adrenaline rush on the planet like it. You're just there's nothing. You're free falling.
Yeah.
For minutes, like there's nothing else like it. You have no control of anything. You're just moving, right? But the first time you jump out of a plane, I'll never forget. I was 18 years old, right? I'm in the C-130, and they're like, "All right, stand by." I've had 7 days of training, whatever on here. I don't know. You jump down a little fake airplanes, and you're like, "We're really doing this."
Yeah.
Right. And I go to the door and hand off your static line to the guy, and you turn and then you jump out, and I just close my eyes. Moving around. Right?
Yeah.
And then your chute opens, you're like, "Oh, thank God." And you kind of come down, and you're like, well, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. But then you get back on the plane and you do it again, an hour later.
Right.
Right. Or the next day. It's the same thing. You're up there, and before you go out the door, it's all the same thing. The emotion kind of builds, a little anxiety, and you're kind of like, "Oh man, I'm doing this again." You're voluntarily jumping out of a perfectly good airplane.
Yeah.
Okay. And you kind of do it, man. You sit, you go out the door, and you're like, "Oh man." And then the chute opens, you're like, "All right, this really isn't that bad." Right. And then you land. So I imagine it's kind of the same thing riding a bull. After a while, you're kind of like, this isn't that bad.
Yeah. And
except I'm not going to have a 900-pound animal step on me or something.
Well, I mean, just like your impact, it's I
guess that's kind of.
It's not so much the fall; it's the sudden stop.
I've seen 8 seconds, man. I don't want to get speared in the chest like poor Lane Frost.
Yeah. No, definitely things can happen.
Right?
But
I mean,
so I'm helping one young guy. And, he's maybe been on 40 or 50, and now his blackout time, because you can tell in the way he rides.
So do you black out every time, or is it?
No,
okay.
So not complete blackout. I'm not talking about just I'm
Cooper's
just saying
colors, you're
it's
cognitively not there right there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because you can tell he had formed some bad habits.
Sure.
The very first jump, he has those bad habits, and then all of a sudden he wakes up and he'll go to his correct form, good training. And I think that's number, let's say 40 for him. Mm-hmm. Well, number 440 is way different. And granted, you've got to train correctly. Perfect practice makes perfect. But I can imagine, for you guys, it's the same where my first bull or first bronc compared to number 500, you can see things, you can hear 100%. People, you can see your shadow. 100%. You can, if the horse does something weird, you notice it.
Yeah.
And I imagine
it's the exact same thing. So, and you only gain more responsibilities the longer you're there. So from being a private of just my job is to carry this ladder, right? So that when we get there, I can throw this ladder up on the wall and then climb up there and look inside this house. You go from doing that, where I just carry this ladder and do what I'm told and pull security, to suddenly now I'm in charge of all of these people on this helicopter. I'm plugged into these wires. I'm talking to people who are flying the helicopter, and I'm relaying messages, and I'm like, "Hey, we're, this, that, the HLZ's, good to go." All kinds of things to on the ground. And now you're a squad leader. You're controlling 3 different maneuver elements of 7-man teams, right? Doing X, Y, or Z. And now you're a platoon sergeant. You're now kind of in the back-ish, right? And you're still controlling. Now you're controlling 4 teams. One's a machine gun team that can do a lot of damage. So you got to make sure those guys aren't too cowboy, right? Because they can do a lot of damage. And then you're you're controlling, you're orchestrating, man. You're just orchestrating this this masterpiece of chaos that just goes around.
And you also have to do your job in all of it.
Yeah,
so
which is reporting, making sure they're doing their jobs, helping them out. If they need some help, I'm telling these guys to go over there to help them, and then there's more nuances that go on with that, casualty pieces. What do I do? How do I do it? How do we bring in that helicopter to get that person out?
And this is every night.
Every single night. Not every night, but I think out of 4 months.
But I'm saying you don't fly over there to do that one time. You're there for 4 months. You're going on multiple operations.
So out of 4 months, you're easily doing 100 missions. It's 100 nights, that's it's pretty good.
That's a bunch.
Right? That's a good season. Yeah. What we call right. Summer months are usually the better, right? Afghanistan, right? Most people it's hot, right? Most people sleep outside. They don't have air conditioning, so they'll sleep on top of their roofs at night because they'll get the cool breeze, right, and everything. So with that being said, so things get a little more shooty, right? A little more fiery because lots of dogs, they have lots of wild dogs everywhere. So like dogs will bark, and then, you know, if you were sleeping on your roof, right, camping or something, and a dog started barking, you'd be like, what is that noise? You know, what is that? And then you might see some little, if there's a lot of moonlight, the illume's a big deal, right? So if it's super high illume, that can either kind of make or break a mission where you're like, man, do we want to go out on high illume? Like, you want to go out on low illume nights. And then if it's raining, like, we don't go out at all, unfortunately, right? Which is like, the bad guys figured that out a long time ago. Because as a safety net, like, we can't have our birds up in the air,
right,
with all their fancy equipment and stuff.
I did a podcast with Greg Coker is his name. He's a night stalker, and
heard of him.
He's got a book out.
Yep.
And
160th dude, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Super cool guys. So that's all we worked with, right? Primarily, we're the 160th dudes. They flew us around all these cool missions and all that. So they only support the special operations members, right?
So he went on, I want to say 11 tours also.
Yeah.
But I think like his first one was like in 01.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So he would have been maybe like towards the beginning of your career.
Oh, easily, yeah.
And then maybe he was getting out, you know, not long after you went on those first few.
Sure. So. And those guys can stay there for a long time, man, because the pilots and crew chiefs or whatever, like, they're hard to obtain. And like, once you get to that level, it's hard to let them go, right? Because you have so much experience, right?
Yes.
Because they can do some wild things, man. They can land those helicopters in parking lots that are this big, right?
So you guys had some
landing. Oh yeah, it's all.
Some of those
we would use the conventional forces helicopters as well, right? Because when it comes to going to do the Lord's work, it's all about who's willing to take me there, right? Do I have to drive? I can't drive there. I have to fly there. Okay, who wants to fly me? And you kind of just, you ask who you have, right? It's who on the base is available or can come to you and pick you up and take you there, kind of thing. So primarily it would be the 160th guys, but every so often, if there was more bigger picture things going on with like maybe some Delta Force dudes or something, right? Like they kind of get first dibs kind of thing, right? Or it also comes down to like mission importance level. So like if our mission's kind of like, he's like a low level pipe hitter kind of guy, but this dude over here, like he's a big someone, we're going to give these guys, whoever they are, whether it's a different Ranger platoon or a Delta Force team or SEAL team, we're going to give them the 160th dudes. Right?
Gotcha.
Because they are the best, right? Simple as that.
Gotcha.
So,
I was unaware of, I guess I just always assumed if you're doing anything in a plane or anything in a helicopter, then that was the Air Force. And I didn't realize like how many jobs were available in the Army,
Yeah.
So like I think he wanted to be a helicopter pilot and went to the Army to do that. To me, that would be like secondary, like, oh, geez, I didn't realize that was even an option over here.
Yeah. So the Army, I mean, dude, the 160th, man, they're awesome. Those guys can do some crazy things with those helicopters. We do what's called lip landing, so they can drop their back ramp that you walk off, and they can put it like on the lip of a roof while the rest of the helicopter is just like hovering above the ground. You know what I mean? So you can like walk off the ramp on top of the roof kind of thing.
Wow.
Or like the same thing, same concept on the edge of a cliff, right? So like they're hovering above space and like the ramp is touching like the edge of a cliff where the top of the mountain is, and you can just walk up the mountain, right? They can fast rope. They, they are like excellent tacticians of what their trade is.
That's
super, super great guys. They've saved my butt tons of times. Really.
The
really
thing that
dudes.
made me, y'all had the same kind of number of tours, and I want to say he had said he had been on like 700 ops, 700 missions.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyhow, that's a bunch. That's a lot of situations.
It is, man, and everything's different, and you learn something every time from every mission. So going back to not blacking out, right? As you progress into your positions and whatever it is, we talked about, going levels of responsibility. Well, you also go into that. You've been here once or twice now, right? So your mindset is way different from your first mission, second mission to your 200th mission or whatever, right? Like I have no idea how many missions I've been on. I couldn't tell you. Not that it's an astronomical amount, but I really couldn't tell you. But if I had to go on a mission today, it would be like walking, down the road. It wouldn't be an issue at all, right? Like it would be like, all right, yeah, let me put my gear on. What's our mission? Where are we going? Cool. All right, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, sure.
Sounds good, man. Right, and then you walk, dude. It just becomes like a rote thing in your mind. It just becomes memory, man. You just go, you just do your thing, right? And then you can look around there and you can see the newer guys, right? And they're like, you're like, hey, we're like 7 miles away still. You can just kind of relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Which is how I would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'll never forget one of my first missions, man, I ever got on. We like landed in the middle of the desert and we were like, I don't know if it was that mission or not, the 13-kilometer one, but we like landed, and back in the day, we didn't ride in the back of the helicopters with bullets in the chamber of our rifles, right? Because in case you like sent one off on accident, right? You didn't want it to like go through the helicopter and kind of thing. And so you always kept them what we call aircraft loaded, which is like you just have the magazine in the gun, but you don't have a bullet in the chamber, right?
Right.
So as soon as you hit the ground, everyone runs off the back of the bird, and then you do like a half moon shape, and everyone pulls security out, and the helicopter flushes and flies away. And like you let the dust settle, right? Because they make an awful mess of dirt and dust, right?
Yeah.
And once the dust settles, everyone like racks their charging handles and like puts around in their chamber, right? Close your ejection port cover, and then you start walking in the direction you need to walk. So I'm brand new, man. This is like mission 1, mission 2. And I'm all hyped up, dude. I'm like, oh man, let's do this, right? I'm jazzed. And I totally forget to rack my charging handle. So I'm walking around with an empty gun, dude. I don't know this. 15 minutes later, we're walking. I'm like hot and sweaty. I'm like staring at all the stars, because under night vision, the stars are amazing, especially like in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan where there's absolutely no like dirty light, right? There's no city lights or street lights. Like it's just pitch black, right? So the stars are amazing. So you're just like staring at the stars. And I'm walking, and suddenly like I look down, I can put my finger in my ejection port, because my ejection port cover had come open, right? They'll kind of come loose sometimes or pop open every once in a while, especially if you like barely bump your charging handle, right? And I could put my finger in there, and I was like, that's weird. Like usually the bolt should be forward. So I had my bolt locked to the rear this entire time. So like dust and stuff's been getting in there, like who knows, right? But I also realized I don't have a round in my gun this entire time. So if like Charlie had come out of the woods, man, I would have got a click no bang big time, right? So I remember walking, and I was like, well, crap, now I can't like load it because it's quiet.
Yeah, you'd be loud.
We got Peltors on, like the, hearing protection, which amplifies ambient noise, right? And reduces gunfire and loud extreme noise, right? So I'm like, you can hear people's footsteps, right? They're walking on the rocks. I'm like, dude, if I send my bolt forward, people are going to hear this. So I'm like, what do I do? I was like, well, I can't like slowly do it. And like, oh my God. I'm having this like internal debate, man. I'm like, what should I do? Should I do this? I'm going to get yelled at. And like, so I'm like, all right, well, I screw it. I got to put a bullet in my gun, right? In case something bad happens. So I go, hit the button. It goes, right? I like load around in my gun, and sure shit, my team leader turns around and he looks at me and he's like, did you just load around in your gun? I was like, yeah, Ross Arndt. He's like, did you not load your gun after you got off the bridge? Like, yeah, negative, Sergeant. My bad. He's looking at me. He's like, I got you. And he just turned around and keeps walking. And I was like, oh, man, I paid that day. We got back. Nothing really happened that night or something, maybe. And I got back, and I earned that one, man.
Dang, that's funny.
Did some physical.
It's kind of like showing up to the rodeo without your bull rope.
I imagine, yeah. It's like doing something silly, right? And you're just like, I got you later. All right,
Except
man.
In that scenario, like, you just don't get on your bull, or you borrow a bull rope. The stakes are, like I said.
When you're a private in the Ranger Regiment, instead you come back and you maybe get some chow, then you immediately coming off the mission, started doing some stupid stuff, like, get what we call getting smoked. So you start getting smoked. So you start like doing sprints and carrying stupid stuff.
So you're still having to do that
You just came off a mission, dude. You're tired. Yeah. Like you got everyone else. They're just like drinking water, and hanging out while you're getting smoked. They're like, oh, we don't want to load our gun. Oh, roger that. And like the whole point is to teach you not, kind of punish you so you don't remember not to do it again, right? And I'll tell you what, I never not loaded my gun again. So
yeah, imagine.
Good to go.
That's hilarious. I'm sure that kind of stuff, though, I mean, like, can happen to the best of us.
Oh, 100%, right? Like, there's, But again, that's why you train it, right? So the whole point, long story long, right? Like, eventually we got to a point where we just stopped doing that, and we started loading our rifles and pistols before we got on the bird. So immediately you got off, you could start shooting. Part of that is remember yesterday I taught you the deliberate load of the pistol. So when you do that, I don't know if you remember me telling you, like, you do that to give yourself a system of redundancy. So you for sure know you successfully loaded that pistol or rifle, right? So that when you do go get in that helicopter and you go, there's been times where like we're landing and we're being shot at and you're shooting while you're still like seated on the plane and like you're getting off running like while shooting kind of thing. Now, had you not loaded that gun, it would have been like hold on, just let me 1 second, please, bad guy. Or like you'd have to like tap rack your gun or kind of, and just, you know what I mean? So we got to a point where we just stopped doing that and told guys like, just be adults and don't accidentally squeeze your trigger and everything will be okay. And it was. And like, so kind of a thing of the past now. So
yeah, that sounds like a whole bunch of lessons that you just kind of had to learn on the fly, which 100%. I mean, 20 years. How much did you see change in your 11 tours?
Oh, a lot, man. Yeah.
Stuff like that.
We went from, you know, especially with like the rules of engagement, right? And like the support we had and didn't have. And then you end up having, more and more filters came on, right? And it was like, in order to get to Z from A, we had to go through B, C, D, E, F, all these things. To where back in the, 10 years ago, it was much easier to do said things, right? And in the same hand, right, other things got easier. Like you'd come off a mission, you'd have to like debrief a group of people like on a what we call a VTC, like on a webcam with like from the FBI, from other people, and you'd show them all this intelligence you collected on the target, right? And you'd be like, and then you eventually just stopped doing that, and we just handed it all off to other people like MPs or something, and then they would take it and go do it themselves. And so like some things got easier because it was like you'd have to come back and build what we call post products or something like that, where you'd have to like pull up a PowerPoint and like draw a little picture of the building you raided, right? And like do all this stuff. That was a couple extra hours of work, man, where all you really want to do is get some food and go to sleep. You know what I mean? So you just came off a mission. I'm exhausted. I got like poop on my boots. Like, you're tired.
Yeah.
So
tactically, what are some of the things though that may have changed? For instance, like the loading the gun part.
Man, so like,
are there little nuances of like even just gear or things that over time you realized were? I'd
say gear, changed with the times for sure. Right, like slings got better. Right, like we went from like the 1-point sling to like the 2-point adjustable sling. Right, for like. That was revolutionary because then you could like cinch it down and walk on patrol with it kind of tight and comfortable, or you could like elongate it and then be able to maneuver your rifle around much easier. Tack lights came out, right? It kind of, at least everything trickles down, right? So like Delta Force and SEALs, they always kind of get everything first and kind of they have bigger budgets or whatever, and then everything kind of trickles down from there. Or even today, like the Ranger Regiment probably has things that SF doesn't have, or SF probably has things that Regiment doesn't have. And then they both have stuff that like the conventional Army does not get, right? Just because budgets are all in place and they're all way different. But still with that concept, like thermals became a big thing, right? So you could before only like a sniper would have a thermal, and it was like this big obnoxious thing that you put on your rifle that went in front of your scope that you could look through and you could see a thermal image, right? Of like whatever you're looking at. Well, then they came out finally 10 years later with a much smaller package that was like only this big, this wide, this tall.
Wow.
On a flip mount. So you could put it behind your optic and I could flip it out of the way if I want to just use my laser or dot, or then if I did see something or someone came out and I wanted to see if they had like a suicide vest on, I could flip it back and then look through my thermal. And, if there was nothing there, then cool, or whatever, right? Like, if they were in a bunch of defilade or bushes, I could, throw my thermal on her. So just things like that got a lot better. Like, the drone stuff came out real big after a while. We started arming drones. Like, things got crazy, man. Things got really cool after a while. Equipment got better. Guns got better. New calibers came out, right? We went from just only having, like, the 300 Win Mag, then we got, like, the 338 Lapua or whatever, right? And just... they say war is not great. Normally everyone wants to go to war. However, war and the money it makes creates inventions and problems, solutions to problems, right? So it's kind of interesting how things work, in full circle.
Tell me about how you came into the Army Marksmanship unit coming out of.
Yeah. So in the Ranger Regiment specifically, you have to you can only progress so far before you have to kind of are forced to leave, and you have to kind of do what's called like a broadening assignment. So you got to do a broadening assignment, and you can kind of push out, and then you got to spend at least 24 months in a different unit as your broadening assignment, right? And then you can kind of come back and then progress on in your career, right? So for me, I decided to move, out of the Ranger Regiment, and then found this job here. My wife's a small business owner in town, so she owns a store in downtown Columbus. So staying on Fort Benning was like huge for me because my family lives here. They live in Noonan. My wife owns a store. Her family's here. She's born and raised from here. We got 2 kids. They're in great schools. We didn't really want to move. So coming over here was like an easy sell for me and my family, right? And then I had a lot of friends. Like I've known Joel Turner for a long time, and a few other people who were in this unit. So reached out, made some contacts. Like, hey, what do you guys think? You guys need anybody? And the competitive side's competitive to get on, right? You got to kind of be like the top 5% of the country kind of thing. So I knew I wasn't going to get a job there because that's not what I do, right? But the instructor training group's a bit different. And I was like, hey, I've been teaching guys how to do things for 10 years, what do you say? You going to give me a shot? Would you be willing to? And they were like, yeah. So I kind of came over, tried out with them, go through a little bit of a tryout, do some shooting. They evaluate how you teach. Are you receptive to criticism? Can you articulate kind of effectively? And, if you have a problem student, can you find different ways to approach them with whatever like yesterday, teaching you, if you weren't getting something, like my job then at that point is to find a different way to articulate that for you to, it makes sense to you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So, and that's big, because you got some guys who are just like, I don't know, man, put your hand on the rope, put one hand up, and then ride the bull. Yeah. Like, is that enough to ride a bull? Probably not, right? It's probably a lot more good. So it's like, you got to like be able to articulate your words in a way that will make sense to anybody.
Yes, sir.
But then also understand when to walk away and be like, okay, I'm not getting through this guy. Like, high five, you're in. And then you bring in someone else to do it. And you kind of switch. So
what all different kind of groups of people do you find yourself instructing?
All kinds of groups. So anyone in the military, Air Force, Navy, Marines, DOD. So we'll hang out with, Hawaii. I'll go to Hawaii and train the 25th ID. Special Forces guys, some DOD agencies, certain people within there.
And are you specifically helping train with handguns?
Yep. So handguns, rifles, long guns, all of it. Yeah. So, and that's what's super unique coming from like the outside in the, the Army and the Ranger Regiment, whatever, and coming over here and seeing this place. At first it was just I needed a job somewhere. I liked the idea of instructing. I liked the idea of being able to stay on Fort Benning. But then once I got here, I kind of fell in love with it. I was like, this is pretty cool, right? Like, we're not maybe as snazzy as the rest of the guys on the team or in the unit, right? Like action or whatever. But, what we do makes a difference. And I believe that, right? Out of the last 2 years, like I've probably single-handedly coached and teached like 2,000 soldiers. You know what I mean? Like I've traveled all over the country, man. Our team is generally gone 100 to 150 days a year. Like we're gone on the road teaching somewhere. Hawaii, Alaska, Germany, Japan, like anywhere where there's an Army base or a military base, we can go, right? And we do. Like I've been to Hawaii twice. I'm about to go again in like a month. I go to Fort Bragg Sunday. Like,
that seems like priceless training, like from the Army's perspective, like having guys like you, like you've got 11 tours under your belt, you've got all this training under your belt,
right? And
then for you to be able to like transfer all that knowledge back to someone, and it's not just like knowing, what the inside of a Beretta looks like. It's more about like, no, this is how you use it, and this is why
100%.
You use it that way.
So, and that's the great part of like why this unit stood up our section, right? Is, the Army every once in a while is always looking how to cut and save money, right? So every once in a while, unfortunately, this unit has come up before, and they're like, hey, what do you guys actually say you do around here? We get you winning Olympic stuff. That's kind of cool, but we got to cut some money somewhere. But then they always come back to us and they're like, well, actually we have this group of people in ITG who, affect 40,000 soldiers over the last, couple years and have increased lethality from 12% on a scored, a test to 40% in 2 weeks, right? We take an average of a 2-week POI, a 2-week course, and we'll score them on a marksmanship test. The average score will be 16. 2 weeks later, we'll do an exit test to see where they've started and where they've come out. And those guys will score like an increase of like 35, 40, sometimes 40% increase.
Dang.
So it's not revolutionary, but it's awesome, man. It's a great feeling, right? I get to go around, and it always helps. Some people enjoy it, some people don't, right? You're still in the Army, so sometimes you just get told to go somewhere and do something. So every once in a while, you get that person who's kind of like, "Yep, I'm just here because I got told to be here."
Right.
And you try to still help them, obviously, and teach them. But the ones who want it, the ones who are turned on, they're like, "Heck yeah, man! The Army marksmanship team, like, sweet, let's do this. I want to be better at shooting." Or the ones who want it, it makes you really enjoy your job because you're like, this is cool.
Well, I
Watch
guess
this, and you teach them some stuff, and they're like, holy dang, I didn't know I could do that, Yeah. So, like yesterday, you were saying you've never had formal marksmanship training, right?
No.
And you started out shooting 4 or 5 inches low.
Right.
15 minutes later, you're punching that pace
Did
out.
not take long.
Not take long at all. It took a little bit of training, a little bit of formal. Hey, don't do this, don't do that, right? And then bam.
So it just seems like it would be such a waste to have guys like you, like after all that you had been through, just like walking around base doing something where you're not teaching.
Right, 100%. So, and that's what a lot of guys do. I mean, a lot of guys. So at least from my knowledge, right, you're leaving the Ranger Regiment, like they'll go to various positions, whether it's inside the Ranger Regiment or out of it, and they'll go teach, whether it's at like Building 4, which is the biggest building here on Fort Benning, I guess, where they kind of run everything out of there, like as far as the infantry goes, like they kind of handle all those big things. Like a lot of guys go there and they kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Advise, I guess. They'll go there and give their 2 cents, and those are pretty big important positions. Or guys will go from here or there and come to the AMU, right? And they'll travel and train soldiers or schoolhouses, and do things like that.
So you said 2 years. Do you plan on going back to?
I think I'm going to stay here for a while. This is a pretty good lifestyle, right? I enjoy what I do. I feel like I'm making a pretty good difference, and with the war winding down, pretty much over and whatnot, going back to that addiction thing, like I didn't join the Army, I guess, to not go overseas and like do what my country asked me to do. I can successfully say I did, right? And I was happy to do it, and I would do it again tomorrow. But now that we're kind of not in a conflict, I guess, anymore, it just doesn't seem super appetizing, I guess. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I might try to go on to other things maybe down the road, but I think for now, this is a pretty great place, and I'm happy to be here. I'm thankful to be here. And, I just hope I can keep making a difference. And,
You've been in how many years total?
Like 11 and 8 months or something. January will be 12 years. So whatever that math works out to.
So one thing I realized on this trip was just how all the different options that the Army affords, with 150 jobs and career paths and only 10 of them being combat MOSs. Like,
right.
That leaves a lot of different options. So, like, what else do you see yourself potentially pursuing with your 8.5 years left?
So I've racked around my brain a little bit and thought about trying to go up to like the special missions unit, so like Delta Force, right? Thought about maybe going up there and trying out for those guys. It's a very arduous process. The hiring packet is very extensive. It's got to get approved, and if it does, you got to go through their selection, which is very arduous, very famous for having a very high attrition rate. But I thought about doing that, right? Because if there's, that's kind of like in my mind always been like the MLB of what we do, right? SF and Ranger Regiment's great, but I think it's almost like a farm league. It's not. That's a bad way to put it, but there's only one official tier 1 unit in the Army, and that's them, right? So in my mind, that would be the end all be all, right? That's like the Vegas of bull riding.
How long is that training?
Oh, I couldn't tell you that, or I'd have to,
Yeah, gotcha.
I don't want to do
But you can.
No,
like,
I'm just kidding. It's like 3 weeks, I think. It's like 3 weeks for the selection or something, and then if you make it, cool.
But like you can get dropped for like.
Oh, for anything, man. Yeah, for most of it's physical, a lot of it's injury, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I've only. I mean, there's not a lot of information on it.
There's not, man.
A lot of them
There's
guys
really
don't
not.
like to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna get in trouble actually.
Well, it just seems like I've listened to like 1 or 2 podcasts and they were like super vague.
Yeah,
But-
super vague, and like honestly, from what I'm tracking, like it hasn't changed ever, not once. And
Wow.
like only like the commander and sergeant major who run the place like only know all the answers to like how it all works, kind of thing.
Right.
And then like it's like a weird coat and punch ceremony. You drink in secrecy when you switch out or something.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
But I guess you gotta have units like that whenever you're.
I mean, super bad things happen. You got to send super dangerous men to go do it.
It seems like somebody who's addicted to the process would be the kind of person you would want trying out.
100%. So on that thought though, one of the cool things is kind of tailing off to a different subject, but a buddy of mine recently has kind of introduced me to this like veteran program that's happening. They're called the Bear Hug Cattle Company. I think I'm saying that right. Bear Hug Cattle Company. They're out of Montana, and essentially they're a bunch of ranchers and cowboys, and they take special operations veterans who are about to get out of the Army, and they're taking dudes out there and showing them like how it's like to live like a cowboy for like 3 months. And they're taking these dudes out there, and they have like specific ranches all across like Montana and Wyoming, I think, that they have already set up, like organized through. Mm-hmm. And they're taking them there, and like you live for weeks at a time on each one of these ranches, and you're like doing like cattle drives. You're like roping, you're branding, you're going all through cabin season, like all this stuff. It's pretty cool, man, what they're doing. And I think they're trying to turn it into like a PTSD thing as well, like therapy kind of thing, where you can come out there and just hang out and just work, man, and let your mind wander and ride horses. And they teach you everything. Like, if you don't know anything, that's fine. Like they teach you how to ride, apparently. Like it looks super interesting, man. Like I was, like I said, I've always wanted to be a cowboy. In fact, after I get out of the military, I've been joking with my wife rather seriously lately about like getting a couple head of cattle myself. And like,
there you go.
Even though I don't know anything about it, I'll figure it out.
Right.
I'll call Dale and be like, "Hey Dale, teach me how to do it."
They're pretty easy.
Yeah.
And very frustrating. A lot of work.
That's what I've heard. That's what I keep getting told by everybody, is just like, just bale hay instead, man. It's almost the same amount of money you make. So,
right.
But this program's super cool, man. And apparently it's kind of becoming a popular thing amongst a lot of people. I think we're all in the same mindset, right? All of us are very A-type, very the likelihood of someone playing sports very competitively is like super high statistic. Like every one of us came from like a very competitive sport background. And then like everyone seems to be into the same stuff, whether it's like hunting, trucks, cowboy, want to be a cowboy, whatever it was, right? So I think it's becoming very popular and it's also kind of a translatable thing. A lot of guys are ranchers specifically. And this is what my buddy was telling me. One of this like super big, like John Dutton style rancher up there was saying like, I just need good guys. That's all I need.
Yep.
Right. Cause I imagine it's difficult on these big ranches, especially to keep good guys, right? Like because cowboys are known to be like wanderers, drifters, right? And you just go from ranch to ranch or whatever, right? So getting good guys and keeping them is kind of hard. Not only that, but your work ethic, whether you're a complainer, you get fed too much, not enough money or whatever, like you got guys voluntarily coming out of the service, right? Especially in this one instance, special operations, you were like, I'll do whatever you tell me to, because that's all I know how to do, because that's what I've been getting told to do my entire career.
Yes.
And just fix that fence. Where's it at? Okay, roger that. How do I ride this thing? I'll figure it out.
Exactly.
And then when I get there, like fix this barbed wire, like roger that. What's next?
Yes. Sir.
I don't know. We're going to go over here and find a cow that's lost in the woods. Roger that.
Yeah. So,
and then we're super good at not eating, super good at not sleeping, and then super good at like, just getting told what to do. And it's like,
yeah, you guys would make excellent cowboys, for sure.
So I think
Yeah.
that's why it's become super popular, is because one, it's everyone wants to be a cowboy. And then two, it's like, I've been super good at being told what to do the last 10 years. Right. So, if I just go work for some rancher, it's like, yeah, just what do I need to do, Sarge?
Yeah. There's a lot of, I've talked to a couple guys about, possibly doing some stuff with some foundations where they're kind of giving back, like what you're talking about, Bear Hug Cattle Company does. And, kind of being the guy that'll maybe help put some veterans on their first bull or whatever, you know? And so nothing's ever materialized, but we've brainstormed about different situations like that. Cause I don't just like let the public come out, cause it's super dangerous. So the best way to get on a bull at my house is either like through the intern program or, somebody that I know, like if one of like somebody who's borderline in my favorites on my phone, like when they call me like, hey, I got this friend. I was like, all right, bring him. But I'm thinking
Sign
the third
this
way.
NDA.
Yes.
Yeah.
The third way would be like kind of something to do with veterans.
So my buddy, Ben Minden is the one who I think kind of started this, and he works there in the summer. Like he got into the Army, was literally like, I want to go be a cowboy. So like, and I remember talking to him and I was like, man, like we weren't like super good friends, but we worked in the same office, and I was like, what are you doing? It's kind of rare for officers to get out of the Army, because usually they stay for a long time because they make great money and, officer things or whatever. Right. So, he was like, dude, I want to get out and be a cowboy. And I was like, that's kind of cool. Me too, man. He's like, no, seriously. I was like, oh, you're serious? He's like, yeah. I was like, what are you going to do? He's like, I don't know. But I think he got a girlfriend or something who was like a barrel racer, and she lived in like Wyoming or something. So he was like, I'm just going to go to Wyoming and like follow her around. And I was like, you were like the epitome of like what not to do in all these cowboy songs, right? Like, you're just like, you're hauling her horses for her while she goes to these barrel races, Yeah. And he was like, well, dude, I just got to get my foot in the door, right? I just got to learn. I'm like, you don't even know how to ride a horse. So he ended up going up here to Pine Mountain, which is like a little town just north up the highway here. And, there's what's called FDR State Park. So like back in the day, FDR used to come down here apparently and like hang out in the tree. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Okay. So he used to come down here and hang out and like picnic or whatever, right? So they made a state park after FDR. Well, there's a ranch up there, super small apparently, and you can take like horseback tours, right? You can go there with your family and like ride through the woods, and super nice, no big stress. Well, apparently it's just like an older man, like late 60s, mid 60s, who runs it kind of by himself, right? And saddles the horses, feeds them, all the chores that come along with that. So he went up there to like learn how to ride, and then like rode one time with the guy and was just like, hey, do you need help? Like I'll just shovel. And I don't even care.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, actually that'd be great. He's like, I'm the best shoveler of actually. So yeah, just point me in the direction.
This is after he got out of the military?
No, he was still in the military.
Oh,
he was
still
about to get out.
Gotcha.
So he was like, yeah, man. So a couple weeks goes by, right? And that Harris County Rodeo is coming up. Remember I told you about that?
Yep.
And I see him there, and he's got spurs on, chaps. I'm like, are you riding? He was like, no, man, I just got done helping, old Greg up there at the place. And I was like, I don't think you need those on right now. I'm not like an official cowboy, but I don't think you're riding. He's like, oh, no, I literally just got done riding, though. That's why I still have them on. I was like, Ben, you can take them off. Like, you don't need, And he was like, no.
These are my walking around spurs.
Yeah. And he's like, no, seriously, I just got out of the truck, man. I was like, okay, just take those off and then you can talk to me. And no, so he got done, and next thing you know, man, he's gone.
That'd be kind of like somebody like maybe wearing their camis, like maybe, in unnecessary places.
100%, like at Walmart, right?
Yeah,
I see these people walk around Walmart in uniform. I'm like, dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, you can change and just wear normal clothes. You don't have to walk. Everyone knows you're military by your haircut, buddy. Like, you don't need to walk around and just. People do that, man. They're like,
yeah.
Can I get
over here
10% off? You know
Let me
what I'm
get
saying?
that.
It's so ridiculous.
Get that military.
But so he does, man. He's gone. He's in Montana. Next thing you know, I see him on Facebook or whatever, and he's in Montana. He's just like cowboying.
Dang.
And I'm like, what do you? And I hit him up. I'm like, what are you doing, man? He's like, dude, I'm just living the life. I'm like, how are you making money? He's like, I'm not.
Ranching.
He's like, I'm not. I'm just like hanging out, dude. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Well, next thing you know, he's like, all right, I got to do something. So apparently he like. I think the rumor has it, this is secondhand information. So I'm, if he watches this, I'm sorry, Ben. I hope I get this right, but he applies for Harvard, knowing he's probably not going to get in. He applies to a bunch of other schools as well, right? He had to write a paper of like why he thinks he should be get accepted into Harvard, right, or whatever. So he writes this paper of like his dream, which is to set up this nonprofit organization for special operators to become cowboys, right? Because like we all want to be cowboys. So he does this, and like he writes such a BA paper apparently that he gets accepted, and they're like, dude, yeah, this is great. Like that dream alone is awesome.
Yeah.
For the support and the cause and everything. And obviously I think the, grammar and punctuation, but the way he wrote it and he got accepted. So now he goes to Harvard, like during the school season or whatever, however college works. And it goes in Cowboys in Montana, like in his off time.
Dang.
And this was like their first class, if you will, of like veterans. So like one of my dudes who worked for me when I was a platoon sergeant just did it. He just went through it and he spent 3 months playing cowboy. On like 3 different big ranches with Ben out there.
So he is Bear Hug Cattle Company.
Him and a couple other, I think, officers who I also like inherently know. I think all kind of went in on this dream and kind of started it up.
And they were Rangers?
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
And they all kind of started it up, and like now they had a bunch of guys out there. I think they had like 4 or 5 dudes. They had like 2 Rangers. One dude was the other dude. I can't remember his name. He used to work here. He was a dog handler. And then the other guy was Crocsdale. So they went up there, and then they had like a Delta Force guy, I think, and then like a SF dude or something.
Dang.
And they went up there and they played cowboy, man, for like 3 months. And I think the idea is they can, learn how to cowboy, right? You learn how to ranch and the whole 9, rope. And then they ended it with a rodeo. And then they had him do like, I think, team roping at the end as like a big fundraiser at a big rodeo in Montana somewhere. But the idea is, you can learn how to rodeo, or not to rodeo, how to cowboy, right? And push cattle and just the ranch life. And then I think you get like offered a job at the end of it, kind of like hey, we liked you so much. You did great. If you want, we'll start you off at this salary. You can kind of work here permanently if you want. I think is kind of the idea. So it's like PTSD kind of helping thing / really cool experience, right? That you can say you did and moved on and tried. And then if you like it a lot, have no attachments pulling you in any other direction, you can kind of stay there permanently and get a job out of it. And it's kind of a big transition piece right out of the military, because that's what a lot of guys struggle with. We get so institutionalized being in the military, right? Like, it's like, what do I do when I get out, right? You're so used to having a buddy, right? You go everywhere with friends. I work with people every single day. I see them every single day. I travel with them everything, right? Like, so when you get out, I talk to friends who get out and they're like, dude, it sucks. I'm bored.
Yeah.
Like my job sucks. I work like a 9 to 5 for Microsoft. Yeah, I make big money, but like these people are lame, because it's like no one's in the same mindset anymore. Right. You can't joke around. Like imagine the way you act, the way you joke. Do you think that would fly working for Google?
Absolutely not.
No, right? Absolutely so it's the
not.
same concept. Like me and the way I act, like it probably would not fly working for Aflac in their big tower downtown, right? Like being a businessman. Like you probably would get yelled at a lot for being sarcastic or trying to be funny. And it's just like you want to continue to associate with the same people and similarities. So it's like a lot of people struggle with these transitions. And there's a lot of programs out there now, but like, man, 20 years ago, right? Like during the initial invasion, when people were getting like really injured, like losing limbs and being forced out of the military, PTSD skyrocketed, right? And suicides and all those things. And, it was just 'cause people didn't know what to do, man. You were just like, especially in the early days, you went from peacetime army to like suddenly invading a country after 9/11. It was just like a lot of shell shock, like new things. Yeah. And all these programs that exist today, they didn't exist 20 years ago, right? So like there was none of this stuff. So it's really fascinating what they're doing up there. And maybe
so we do so I have an intern program. I've had dozens of people come in.
Yeah.
They work for free.
Yep.
They work for free for a time. And then they start getting paid.
Is that the little room you run in the back with all the clothes, and you make kids pack up clothes back there?
Yeah. So that's the apparel. So my apparel company is
just like throw things at them. You kind of haze
so they'll
them.
work in the warehouse, but they'll also pursue. For instance, Kevin here rides bulls, Donnie rides broncs, so they work for me, in the warehouse, and on the ranch, but then they also are pursuing their dreams of that. And
what's that girl's name that works for you?
Jordan. Yeah, she still works for us. So
that was kind of what her deal, right? Was like in your first season on Netflix, she was like bull riding /
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
And so I'm just thinking maybe like we should do, maybe the next intern is like veteran or something. That'd be
think
cool.
It would be. I think it would skyrocket, man.
Yeah,
I think it would
that'd be neat.
do wonders for you guys, for your company, and for whoever it was that comes, man.
And maybe there's no telling what kind of grants we would get from the Army. They'd be like, "Here, just take all this money." Like,
I don't think I can legally.
Yeah, I don't think that works whenever it's a .org.
I don't think so.
That's the whole part about giving back.
Yeah.
No, but for real, maybe that the next intern should maybe be like, we should like make it like you got to be a veteran. So remind me of that, Donnie. We've got 10 right now.
Donnie, that's on you, man.
That's on you. This is on you. We've got 10 interns right now. So
now, how do you pay for all of them? Do you feed them? Do you house them? Like,
we'll house them, but like I said, they work for free for like a week or two.
Yeah,
and really that just kind of helps
vet them, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then they really want to be there,
right? Yeah,
it
would kind of be unfortunate to start paying someone into 5 days and find out they don't really want to be there.
Kind of like, I guess, like, fortunately we have enough people that want to work for us.
Yeah.
That we can do that where I don't have to like go convince someone to work for me.
Yeah.
So essentially, and then after that week or two, I continue to refer to them as an intern. But that's mainly just for marketing for the videos,
sure,
so people know we take interns.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you hear that word, you think of, all right, well, I'm going to work for free.
Right.
But again, 2 weeks. Sometimes there's been a few interns that came on when we really didn't need a lot of extra help. They might have worked a month for free.
Right.
But that was just because they were there to learn, and that's the main payment is like you're learning how to ranch, you're learning how to rodeo, etc. So anyhow, that's kind of how the intern deal works. But I think this next one's got to be a veteran type deal. So, we didn't talk about, going into the Army. Like, what is it that attracted you to? We kind of jumped to the middle of your story, but like, young Mike, like you're thinking, like, what is it that made you choose the Army?
Man, so I was a classic troublemaker in high school, thought I was funny and I probably wasn't, chased girls around, got bad grades, thought I was good at baseball, probably wasn't nearly as good as I thought I was. Wasn't really going anywhere, didn't really have any ambitions, right? My dad owned a construction company, so I was like, I'll just work construction with my dad. And then like 2008 came and that recession happened and he lost all of it. He lost the whole thing. He had to file bankruptcy. And, my mom had a great job, always had. She worked for Verizon Business, like Verizon, like proper, like establishing phone lines in hospitals and schools, like big projects. But as far as me, like I didn't want to go to college. I hated school, man. I hated sitting down at a desk and being forced to learn stuff that just like didn't intrigue me. Yeah. Like I hated math. I thought it was boring, didn't need it. That big regret, right? I use math all the time now. And so ultimately regret my previous life, right? I wish I would have made none of those choices. And so ultimately didn't really have a plan. And my dad kind of looked at me and was like, hey, what are you going to do? Right? Like, I don't think you should just stay here. You need to go out and do something. So I was like, all right. And his good friend's brother was in 2nd Ranger Battalion. And he was like, I can talk to Don for you. And, if you want, I can put you in touch and you can think about maybe joining the Army. You ever thought about that? And I was like, I want to be a SEAL, man. Right? Everybody wants to be a Navy SEAL, right? They got the best hair, coolest equipment. And, Charlie Sheen was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be a SEAL. So I talked to Don. Don's like, hey, man, he sent me this sweet email. Never forget it. And it has everything broken down from like basic Army infantry to like Navy SEAL, Air Force, PJs, Delta Force, like everything. You name it, it's on this list, on this email. And it has it all categorized, like what they do, what their budgets are like, what kind of equipment they get, what kind of missions they do, what kind of things they do, like the whole gambit, dude. And I looked at this thing and I was like, all right, well, I want to be a Navy SEAL. But Delta Force sounds pretty cool too. I wanted to do something cool, right? I wanted to like go overseas. I wanted to fight bad guys. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best. I knew that. I wanted to be like super competitive. I wanted to be known as like, that dude's super important. He's super good at what he does. That's what I wanted. I didn't know how I was going to get there yet or where that was going to be, but I was like, I wanted to be that guy where you were like, whoa, that's Mike, So I was like, I'm going to be a SEAL. Second idea is like, I'll go to the Army and I'll go to Delta Force. And then I was like reading this thing, navigating this like puzzle. And I was like, well, you can't just like go to Delta Force. And I was like, all right, well, I'll be a Ranger first, you know? And then I guess I eventually kind of go to, it has to be like a stepping stone in order to get there. And I was like, all right, that's fine. I'll be a Ranger like he was, right? And he like kind of talked me into it more or less. So I go to the Navy recruiter. The Navy recruiter's like, yeah, man, we'll send you to BUDS, no problem. Just pick your MOS. And I was like, what does that mean? And they were like, we'll pick your job. And I was like, well, I want to be a SEAL. He's like, well, the SEAL's not a job, dude. It's like, you know, you got to go there, make it, and then you can be a SEAL. And I was like, well, yeah, I'll join like the infantry, I guess, and then be a SEAL, right? And he's like, we don't have an infantry. Like, are you dumb? And I was like, yeah, kind of, you know? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah,
and he
that's
was
me.
like, yeah, hello. And he was like, dude, but you can be a cook, a submarine guy, or, you know, radar technician. And I was like, I don't want to be any of those. And I was like, wait, hold on here, bud. You're telling me you're going to sit there with both cowboy boots on and tell me that if I fail BUDS, I go back to being a radar technician? And he was like, yes. And I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I walked away. I was like, screw that. Right. Cause that's how it works. Literally. Like you get one of these weirdo jobs and then you go to BUDS, and if you pass, you become a SEAL, like cool. And then if you don't, like you go back to doing that weirdo job. And I was like, well, man, like it's like a pretty high attrition rate. Like that's a roll of the dice. So I was like, well, screw that. I'm going to go be a Ranger. So I joined the Army. They were like, you want to be a what? I was like, I'm going to be a Ranger. And they were like, all right. Like that recruiting station in that small town of California where I grew up never had someone come through apparently to be a Ranger. So they were like, are you sure? You know what you're getting into? And I was like, just give me the paper, guy. Let's go. Come on. And so I did. So I went to, joined the Army, went to basic training, went straight to airborne school, and then RASP became RASP while I was in like airborne school. So it used to be RIP, Ranger Indoctrination Program. And then they changed it to RASP because the attrition rate was so bad. The regimental commander was like, I can't sustain this place on graduating classes of 2, right? So they added 2 more weeks onto it, I think. So they took it from like 2 weeks to 4 weeks, I think. So when I graduated airborne school, I got picked up and got sprinted over there, and I actually became a heat casualty for the first time ever. So I got like a thermometer up my butt and, you know, my core temperature taken. And I was like, well, this is what the regiment's like. Sweet. Found out that like even the cadre who were running it, they were like, we don't know what we're doing. This is new. We just know we have to hang out with you nerds for an extra 2 weeks. So, and teach us like a little bit how to shoot a rifle and pistol and blow things up a little bit. That's all RASP really at first, like in its infant stage, was like, it was still RIP, which was like this horrible 2 weeks long period of like getting hazed and like physically punished to see who was going to quit. And then whoever didn't quit, like graduated.
Yeah.
So like the end product arguably wasn't great, right? It was like, all you have to be is like a rock eater and not quit, and you could pass. Right. So like, it wasn't that great because like you could be really, really dumb and not super bright, or just like a bad human being, but just not quit and like become a Ranger. And next thing you know, you're like doing the Lord's work in some foreign country with this $1 million worth of equipment, and like you can really not be the greatest person, right? So they were like, we need to change this thing. And then also to make the end product of the course better, so that when you showed up to your platoon, you were a little bit more caught up on things, right? They taught you how to shoot. They taught you a little bit how to breach and blow things up. And then they taught you how to like, I think room clear or something a little bit. They just kind of showed you a little bit of how to do things. So when you got there, it wasn't the first time you saw it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So we did that and passed that. And the next thing you know, I was in the Ranger Regiment. And then, you know, the rest is history.
Dang. Yeah.
You know, looking back at it, all I wanted to do, I told my dad, I was like, well, I wanted to play baseball. And he was like, well, you're not playing baseball. I was like, okay, well, I'm not playing baseball. All right. You know?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Check.
And I was like, well, I want to be a cowboy, because my dad cowboyed for a little while in Idaho. So he left California. He graduated high school and then followed a buddy up to Idaho and cowboyed for a while. He was like a foreman, I guess. Like he ran the ranch or whatever for a while. And then my dad went up there and like helped, like worked for him. So he like cowboyed for a while and then moved back and met my mom or whatever. And, you know, the rest is history of that. So like growing up, it was always like kind of a cowboy mentality, like hard work, construction life. But like we watched John Wayne and Lonesome Dove all the time and like whatever else. And like kind of lived cowboy virtues of like hard work, you know, hunting, fishing, like whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So I was always like, I want to be a cowboy, a baseball player, or an Army Ranger.
Dang.
And like baseball didn't work out. Well, I couldn't be a cowboy because I was like in the middle of Southern California where I couldn't be a cowboy. And then I was like, well, I got to make money somehow, So I'll go to the Army. So I joined the Army.
Dang.
Well, here I am.
Here you are.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Now I'm talking to Dale Brisby.
11 years in. Now you're talking to Dale Brisby. Yeah. Well, when you get out, if you want to come intern for me.
Intern.
That is,
Are you going to pay me, or are we just saying intern for the publicity right now? Or
I mean, you got to work for free for the first week.
My wife's not going to take
Donnie's going to be upset. If you don't work for free for at least a week, Donnie's going to be upset.
1 week, Donnie. That's all I give you. I got a wife and 2 kids, man. She's going to be pissed.
Well, we usually wrap these up with life advice. So if you have life advice for just like the everyday person, and then life advice for someone who's about to walk into the Army.
So life advice for the everyday person. Man, I'd say, increase your exercise. A lot of people don't exercise at all. Or they think they do, but like what they consider exercising isn't really exercising. And I don't say that from like this biased standpoint of like, I love to work out, so I say you should go work out. It's just super, super healthy for you.
Yeah.
Like I know people who are very unhealthy mentally, like anxiety through the roof. They take all these pills, and it's like, dude, if you just worked out, you would be so much healthier.
Yeah.
Your anxiety, your stress, like all of this would just go away. And so, I guess my advice would just be like, just find something you enjoy doing, man, and do it, and then don't make excuses, right? People will, oh man, I got home late. It's like 4:30. I probably can't work out. I got to make dinner, and you got the Cowboys game coming on. And you're like, I don't know, man. It's like, you could get 30 minutes in. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Come on.
Yes,
and just 30 minutes, just do something. Something is better than nothing. And then before you know it, it'll become regimented in your life, and you'll always, like you said, you run all the time, right?
Yes, sir.
How do you ever feel weird when you miss a couple of days of running?
Absolutely.
If I don't exercise, I have noticed it. I've like done an experiment on myself. My anxiety, my stress, my I'm quicker to like snap on people.
Yes, sir.
It'll just skyrocket.
Yes, sir.
And I'll start getting weird. I have to like almost relieve a excess abundance of energy in order to kind of stay mellowed out. Right. And I've talked to people who are way smarter than me, and they say that's actually like a kind of a reoccurring trend they have seen now post like the war ending and all that. It's like a lot of people, especially in the special operations community, are so used to being at this certain level of adrenaline.
Elite level.
And just your body gets used to producing this amount of adrenaline. Right. That you're just like, go, 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 go,
and then
go.
when it stops abruptly.
And then suddenly I came to this unit, and now I don't do anything that really that takes adrenaline. It's like I shoot some guns. That's about it. Right. So I found myself like getting jittery and just like almost like heart palpitations. Right. And you're like, this is strange, man. I feel weird. And I noticed it one days I wouldn't work out, or I missed a workout because I was traveling, or I was like tired, or just made excuses.
Dang.
Right. Like I didn't have to work out anymore. Right. I don't really have to like do PT as much as I had to, right? Like
at least not enough,
not
like
dire.
to save your life.
Exactly. It's not like dire if I make sure I'm doing PT anymore. I just have to hold the Army standard now, right? Like, so I figured that out, and I just started doing it. And I started, now I try to work out 1 to sometimes 2 times a day, and I am so much more well-rounded, man. Like health-wise, anxiety-wise.
I've never heard that kind of spin on it.
Yeah. It's wild,
That's
man.
Super interesting.
I've also like knocked off the drinking, man. Like I don't really drink a lot anymore. Yep. And that's been huge as well. Because I think that just aids in it, right?
Right.
Especially with
it's a depressant.
Yeah, and I think it also negates like the exercise what you're doing, right? You're like you're building yourself up, and then that just like
brings it back down.
What you're doing, what you're building, So I think between those two things, man, it's been a that, and I've my family and my wife and I've been going to church a lot more. So
yes, sir.
Now that I've been home, and I think
your faith is
that's
pretty
been
important to you.
Huge help. So,
So what would you tell the young recruit?
Yeah. Oh man, young recruit. I would say, come in with an open mind. Try not to think you know everything, right? And just be a sponge.
Yes, sir.
Just soak up everything you can. Just say yes, sir, Robert Sergeant, and do whatever it is you get told to do the best you can, right? And if you got a good leadership, you will excel. They will see you, like you will be the one that they pick out, they talk about and close behind closed doors, and you will excel.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? If you're the one running around, and that comes from like being a Ranger private, and like when you're a Ranger private, I know I keep talking about like Ranger, but like it's all I know, unfortunately, right?
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
But like when you're a Ranger private, like you will. So if you went over to the Ranger Battalion right now, you would see privates running. Like they would just like you'd be like walking around, you'd be like, why is this guy running around? It's because you have to. Like you literally are told to run everywhere you go, and all it is like it's supposed to be like this mental thing you get ingrained into you. That one, you will do everything to the best of your ability, and you will run everywhere you go, so that it gets done the fastest. Everything's expedited, and you're doing it all to the best of your ability. But then once you get to that position of leadership and that kind of point of like you've earned that position, that rank, that whatever, like you no longer have to run because you've kind of done that part and you've earned it, you've shown it, you've proved it. So I think if anyone joined the service tomorrow and came in with that mentality, whether you're in the Ranger Regiment or whether you're in the 82nd or whether you're in a CB company in the Navy, like I think you would excel, right? Mm-hmm. It'd be like being the new guy on the ranch or the new guy on the football team. Like if you just hustle, right? If you just take those same mentalities and you apply them to real life, I think everyone would go farther.
Yes, sir.
You know,
man, that's good. My life advice is going to be just as revolutionary, and it is always give 100% unless you're donating blood. If you're interested in the Army, if you're interested in hearing more about how you can get involved, check the links in the description below this video, and we will see you here in Fort Benning, hopefully. Yeah, you get to hang out with Mike.
The home of the infantry.
Bingo. Thanks for listening to this podcast. We are on to the next one.